Good morning. You're listening to WPVM in Asheville, North Carolina, 103.7 on your dial. This is the Blaine's World Show, typically heard Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and you can also watch on WPVM's Facebook page, which you're doing right now. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, from my studio in Fairview, North Carolina, and we have a special show today featuring Steve Lloyd at HART Theater. And Steve, you can wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world.
Hi.
Okay, so if you're watching, Steve Lloyd is the executive director at HART. He's also the director of the upcoming play. And the upcoming play, Steve, is what?
It's called Slow Food, and it opens tonight,
Right.
actually. This is Saturday, and it opens this evening. It was supposed to open last night, but the gods had other ideas and played with the weather again. So we're opening finally after a 2-year wait.
I was going to say, so this is really slow food.
It's incredibly slow.
What happened 2 years ago?
2 years ago, March 13th, 2020, this show was opening in the studio theater at HART, and it got one performance before theaters were closed down everywhere due to COVID. So this is the same cast: Lynn Donnelly, Stephen Gagne, and Ariel Kaleli. They've held on to this show for 2 years, and we're finally getting the rest of the run in.
I mean, that must have been something, though, that you were so lucky to get the same cast.
Well, I mean, it was relatively easy to put back together. We still had to go into rehearsals, and they still had to go back and relearn it because it's a 3-person cast, and they all are on most of the time. So it's a lot of material. But they were able to pull it back together again, and everything was still there. What was really strange 2 years ago is, as we all remember, when everything closed down that March 13th, we were all told that it would be maybe 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
And so everything was left in place. The set was all there, the props were all there, and they stayed there for like 2 months. So it was really very kind of bizarre for a while. Going in and seeing everything still waiting for a performance and nobody coming back. And it became clear, finally, we started putting things away. And
Yep. When it was scheduled 2 years ago, which theater was going to be in? The same theater?
it was going to be in the studio.
Oh, in the studio.
In the Fiker studio. This time, it's not. It's in the Fangmeyer, which seats more people. And in this case, it allows us to spread people out. It allows us to deal with some COVID protocols. We were able to open this in 2021, last March, before anybody else was able to, because of the Fangmeyer, because it's a large space, and we were able to put people socially distanced at tables. And we're doing the same thing for this show because of the current spike. People are required to wear masks unless they're actively eating or drinking. And for one of the studio shows this year, because there's going to be food served, there will be proof of vaccination required, but that's not the case for this show, at least.
Well, you mentioned the one show too. I think yours was the very first show. I saw when stuff opened up, where it was one of the first. We had the one-man show with about George
That's
Burns.
Wild Card.
And wow, is that brilliant? It was just
Say Goodnight Gracie. I could have run Say Goodnight Gracie all year long. It was incredibly popular.
And you did.
And we pulled the plug on it because he just basically got wore out. We ran it for 5 weeks.
I was going to say you extended it, yeah. Oh, but what a great show that was! And like you said, I felt comfortable because it was very in the theater. It was very spread out. You know, you weren't on top of each other, so it was great.
It felt like a nightclub, actually. Right. I mean, you went in and there were candles on the table, and it really felt like you were going into a rather exclusive nightclub instead of going into a COVID protocol environment.
Well, now for Slow Food, for the benefit of folks who don't know the story, give kind of the Reader's Digest version.
It's a couple who have gone to Palm Springs for their anniversary, and it's a Sunday night, and they're in a Greek restaurant where they have a waiter who is so attentive that they never get served. He continually second guesses whether they've made the right choice. And in the meantime, you discover a variety of things about him and about them. And it's got elements of Beckett and No Exits, Jean-Paul Sartre, and Waiting for Godot, but it also rings like a Neil Simon comedy. The banter in it, I was watching it the other night, and it reminded me of Prisoner of Second Avenue and The Odd Couple, of just this very kind of acerbic banter going back and forth between these three characters, and it's very funny.
Well, it just sounds like the perfect show for people to see, especially with COVID, especially for all that's been going on. What a great way to come out to the theater and have a good time.
Oh yeah, I mean it is a really entertaining 90 minutes. It runs without intermission, and you can buy wine by the glass or by the bottle and sit at your socially distanced tables and have an evening that feels like you're in a nightclub, having a lovely time, imbibing what you have and watching them wait for what they aren't going to get.
Well, why I'm anxious to see it too, because I've been to too many restaurants like that, that you either kind of get great service and a really good waiter, which you appreciate, or sometimes just the opposite. It's terrible. So this is just, I live this many times when I've gone out to a restaurant.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the three people in this cast are extremely good. Obviously, Lynn Donnelly and Stephen Gagne are very popular actors with our company and appear together often. And then Ariel Kalele, who plays the waiter, I played opposite him in The Field a couple of years ago. He played my son, and he's just wonderful in this.
see, talk about what you do, which has always impressed me in terms of I love watching you direct, but I also love watching you act. Do you have a preference?
I love both. There aren't that many great parts for somebody my age. I've 2 years ago, I got to play Fagin in Oliver.
I remember.
That's really kind of the last great musical theater role for somebody who's my age. That's really a lead. And there are still some roles out there that I would like to play. Long Day's Journey into Night. I would love to play James Tyrone in Long Day's Journey into Night. So those may be in the future at some point, but it's much easier to find directing projects to do because you can pick anything that you want that's interesting. You're not restricted. When I do something where I'm acting, I am actually later on in April, we're doing Newsies.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm playing Joseph Pulitzer in
Oh.
Newsies. So
I by the way, I can't wait to see that. It's one of my favorite shows. And then I did a show on this station on the youth group. That's interesting about that show. It's a combination, right, of with the kids group and then with the adults are in that as well.
right. I mean, because all of the leads are young people, we decided to do Newsies, the full production of Newsies. We thought about doing Newsies Junior, which is the scaled down version of it. But at the time we were debating about it, that became unavailable. So we decided to just go for it and do the full production of Newsies with a combination of an adult cast and the Kids at Heart actors filling in all of those lead roles that are written for them. And so it's kind of a hybrid of a main stage production making use of the youth drama group that we have been developing for the past several years that have got some amazingly talented young people in it.
But I'm a little disappointed in hearing you. I mean, you'll be great in the Pulitzer role, but I thought you would have chosen FDR,
Oh,
if you get a choice, but the Pulitzer, so that should be a lot of fun. Talk about back to the current show. How do you do two things? One, how do you choose to play?
It was brought to me by Stephen and Lynn. They both put it forward, and at the time, I thought about it as a main stage production. Sure. But anyway, they brought it to me, and it fit them perfectly, and and the studio is a good place for small cast shows. And with Slow Food, I had the benefit of having access to all of the equipment in the bistro. The Harmon's Den Bistro is currently closed. It closed with COVID, obviously, and it won't reopen at least for the next year and a half, until things become a little bit more normal with food service and being able to find employees and get help. Right now, it's impossible, so we're not even trying to go there. But we do have everything that the bistro had in terms of dishes and dinnerware and all of the things that you would find at a restaurant. So it was very easy to create the restaurant for this couple to come into.
So you're lucky in this show that two people brought it to you, and they're absolutely, I imagine, perfect for the role. How did you cast the waiter?
How did I cast the waiter?
How did he come into the play?
Well, I had worked with Ariel on the field, and thought he would be really perfect for it. The role is actually written for somebody older, considerably older, but I decided to cast it as a young upstart who thinks he knows everything. And that's basically what you've got a waiter who is so egocentric and just everything kind of rotates around him wanting to plan the meal and wanting to schedule the timing. And this couple is starving, and they're just not going to get what they want.
It's so funny because just last night, Cynthia and I were going out to dinner, and we went to this one place. We were really hungry, Steve. Same thing, but it was so loud. I've never seen a place so loud, and so we actually had to leave. It's just we wanted this perfect dinner. Then we went to another place. It was fine, but you want an experience when you go out to a restaurant, and want it to be perfect, and the server plays a big part in it. People don't realize that.
Yes, well, he's wanting this to be perfect too. He's killing them with love. That's the thing. Is it's like he's overdoing it, and all they want is their food.
What's great about this, Steve? You already have me laughing about it. I haven't even seen it yet. But it's just, I could see with the two lead characters, they're just perfect. I gotta believe they're perfect for the roles. I could just see Lynn, this almost seems like a role created for her, when you think about it.
Oh yeah, she's sort of the good cop, and Stephen Gagne gets to be the bad cop.
And I can see him in that role too. It's just the two of them. And one of the great things I love about stuff at HART, Steve, and a compliment to you guys, is that whatever you show, it's almost, to me at least, perfectly cast. It's just, and that's so important, I guess, in any show. That if you have the right cast, the play will be okay. But if you have the wrong cast, you're going to be in trouble. So.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that a director does. I've told people I've directed obviously for 30 years, and as far as I'm concerned, the most important thing as a director that you do is cast the show. If you end up with a really appropriate cast, you don't really have to do very much except guide them just a little bit. I don't give detailed notes. Let people do what they're doing, and then I'll just coax them a little bit, this direction or that direction, to make sure that they stay consistent with the way that I view the play. But I trust the actors that I've cast. If you miscast it, then it's almost impossible to fix.
Well, one of the things too, Steve, you've done over the last couple of years, and you'll tell me how long, but you've also developed a relationship with the local college, and boy, have you brought in some talented people, in terms of a lot of stuff you do there. Talk about that.
Yes, well, we have developed a nice relationship with Western over the course of the past 10 years, especially. When David Belcher was there, he and his wife were real supporters of the arts and really supported the theater department reaching out and being connected in the community and encouraging students to perform here if they had the opportunity. And so we brought in a number of Western students as interns, or guest artists over the course of the years, and we still have got a really nice relationship with Western and students there. Here in the summertime as interns, they teach. Some of the students from Western teach as part of our youth drama program, Kids at Heart. They teach classes, so it's been a really good relationship with them.
And what's, I think, fantastic about it for me as a fan of HART is that I get to see some of my regular favorites. You know, I love a lot of people you have in other shows, but I've had such enjoyment seeing some new folks I've never seen before. You know, and then what I love doing, Steve, is seeing them and then seeing them in a second show or a third show and see them grow and see the,
Mhm.
you know, it's just an evolution process that I just love watching, you know. So
Yeah.
a lot of them have always, some of them have become part of your regular troupe or they're in a lot of your shows, which is just really neat.
We've gone through eras. It's very interesting because people will become frustrated with the fact that there's somebody who's a lead in a number of shows over the course of several years, but then they evolve, into other things, and a new batch come in of people who you don't pick shows for the actors, but if you know that you've got a certain group of people, you'll pick things knowing that you've got those people to choose from. One of the most interesting things is it's now been almost 15 years ago, but I'd always sworn that we would never do West Side Story because it's impossible to cast. It's
Sure.
supposed to be, two gangs, and where are you going to find enough young people to play all of those roles? And I've been involved with 3 other productions of West Side Story that all of them I thought were flawed in a major way. And we were doing My Fair Lady, and I was sitting up in the booth, and I looked out onto the stage, and I realized that in the chorus I had the cast of West Side Story. And I immediately changed what I planned to do the next summer because I knew that all of those kids that were in the chorus were rising seniors, and I was going to have them for one more summer. And if I didn't do it now, I would never have another
No.
chance.
So sorry I
And
missed it.
and the production of West Side Story that we did is the best production I've ever seen. And it was completely serendipity that they just fell in my lap, and I never had them again after that.
And that was probably, I think that was maybe the year before I moved out to Western North Carolina, so I'm sorry I missed that. But what's something else I get a big kick out of, in another show I did on Kids at Heart, and what I hear is that a lot of those folks then go into main stage productions, right? You've
Oh
had
yeah.
several graduates, which is just really exciting.
Yeah, because they get to do Kids at Heart through high school basically, but if they stick around, then they and even well, Andrew Delbane, for example, this is now 3 years ago. He's now grown, but 3 years ago when he was like 13, 14 years old, he was essentially the child lead in MAME,
Oh, right.
which was
Yeah.
a huge production, and he was an actor out of the Kids at Heart program, but he was the star of the big summer musical.
I remember, which was a lot of fun. It's also with Kids at Heart, I see some kids productions, but the ones at Kids at Heart are pretty good. They have a different feel than typical kids theater, I think.
Yeah, I try to tell people it's like if you come to see one of these shows, it's not going to be
Right.
elementary school pageant. This is going to be a first class production with a lot of money spent on it and a lot of time, and the choreography, the voices are going to blow you away. Every time I'm not really connected with Kids at Heart. Sheila Sumter is the person who's in charge of
Does a
that
great
program.
job with it. Yeah.
And she's amazing. And every one of them I've gone to see, I've just been astonished at how good they are. So there are no compromises made.
And that's my reaction too, because again, I'm not a super big fan of kids productions, but the ones I've seen at Heart have been really good. And especially Newsies, I can't wait because I just love the show, And especially
Yeah.
this guy Joseph Pulitzer, I'll have to kind of look out for him in that show.
I get to be the bad guy. Bad guys are much more fun to play than good guys.
Well, Oliver too, right? So
Yeah.
you enjoyed playing the bad guy. Talk about, Steve, a couple other things. Talk about what Heart is also coming up in HART, both for this winter season and then going into the fall season?
Well, coming next is a one-man show starring Doug Savitt, and it's called Nocturne. Uh, it's about a person coming to deal with the fact that he was the cause of his sister's death a number of years earlier. That will be followed by Anne of Green Gables, which is a Kids at Heart production that will be on the main stage. And so it's filling one of those slots. And then we're doing a cabaret that Candace Dickinson is putting together that will be Broadway music from the 21st century. So things that are newer. And that will be done as a cabaret with people at tables. That is the one. There's going to be food available for that show, and because people will be sitting at tables and eating, they won't be wearing masks, and so that is the one show that proof of vaccination is going to be required. And then closing out the studio season is Anne, which will star Allison Stinson. And it is a one-woman show based on the life of Ann Richards, the former governor, the late governor of Texas. Ann Richards was a larger-than-life character. She was the last Democratic governor of Texas. She was like I said, a larger-than-life character, a Texas woman with exclamation points out beside it. And Allison Stinson is going to be wonderful in that, and that will close that out. And then Newsies comes in April on the main stage, and that will be a huge production before we get into the main stage season.
By the way, just to thank you folks, is the fact that I love having what you call the studio season, because come the winter, there's not a lot of stuff for me to see, so that you're one of the few theaters that's going, well, talking even about that process, because I remember I used to love seeing your curtain speeches where you talk about having two theaters, and it just changed the whole thing around, because now you went from being only doing X number of shows to being actually full year round. What was that process?
We do run pretty much full year round. The complexion changes in the wintertime because the population goes down so much. We don't have the tourist population or the seasonal residents here, and it becomes more serious. The people who are here in the wintertime like to see the things that are really meaty, which is great for us. I don't pick the shows that go into the studio. Actors and directors do. So any actor or director who has a show that they would like to do, the condition is that it can't be something that we would consider for the main stage. So we're not going to have Death of a Salesman in the studio, even though that's a serious drama. Death of a Salesman is a main stage production. It's not a studio show. But we've done Beckett and Chekhov. We've done small cast plays that people have never heard of. We've done musicals, especially smaller musicals. And it's actors who come to me, or directors who come to me. And basically, the deal is when you come to me, you have to have your director and your cast in place, everybody committed. And I will give you a slot. The theater pays the royalties. The theater provides you with the support that you need. We keep the box office, and you get to do a pet project. And that's the way it's been for 20 years. It's extremely popular. We do 5 to 6 shows over a 10 to 12 week period. So every 2 weeks, there's a different show. And that's what happens in the wintertime. Now we've got Kids at Heart. So we've got 3 to 4 major productions that they do in November, December, April, August in some cases. And then we've got the main stage season, which is the 1st of May through the end of October. And there are 6 shows that happen on the main stage during that 6-month period. And when I say main stage, that's the Fangmeyer Theater and the Performing Arts Center. Those are the 2 main stage facilities. The studio theater, the Fichter Studio Theater, right now is not being used this year because COVID doesn't allow us to get people into a space that small. But that's the other theater that we have, and it seats 60 people.
And the 2 things I love in particular are, one, about the studio series. I've seen, Steve, stuff I've never seen elsewhere. In other words,
I
you
have
know.
two.
Yeah. No, but that's so great because, one of the things I think it's cool about some of the work you do is that you won't have seen elsewhere. So all the studio stuff I've never seen elsewhere, which is really great.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about what I mentioned before, which I used to love hearing you do that curtain speech. Um, and I remember when you started making it that you had this dream or vision, and again, it's all yours, I believe, to go from one beautiful theater, the main theater, into having a second theater. What was it you're thinking behind that?
Well, actually, I started thinking about this in 2008, and then the stock market crashed and the housing market went under, and it got put off until 2011. But HART is the number one attraction in Waynesville. And with only one facility, our season going from the 1st of May through the end of October, we were in a position where we would do a show and we would then have to close for 2 to 3 weeks while we rehearsed and built the next show. So a show would run for 2 to 3 weeks, and then we would be closed for 2 to 3 weeks, and then we would be back open again for 2 to 3 weeks. Well, if we're the major attraction in town, that really throws a monkey wrench into restaurants, for example, because it means that when we're up and running, a restaurant is going to get a rush at 5:30 or 6 o'clock of people who come in and then want to be out in time to get to a HART production. But then the theater closes down and that rush goes away. So how do you staff? And if we're running all the time, our impact on the community is several $1 million a year, not our ticket sales, but people who stay over in hotels and spend the night here because they're seeing a show. If you're going to see a play at HART and you're seeing it at night, you're not going to get out until 10:30. You're not going to drive to Asheville to a motel. You're going to stay here. So we have a huge economic impact beyond just our tickets. And the argument that I was able to make to the community was, if we have a second performance space, we can toggle back and forth between the two and not be closed at all during that period of time. A show will close on one stage and something will open on the other. And that means that we're an attraction that is open all the time. And that increases our impact on the community. So that was the thinking. And it also allowed us to begin to add staff, because as long as we were operating the way that we were, we'd kind of hit a ceiling in terms of possible revenue and being able to actually staff the theater with somebody besides me. The argument that I was also able to make at the time was that we needed to have, if you go back 10 years, I was the only full-time employee. And to have an organization this big resting on the shoulders of one mortal person is not a healthy situation to be in. You need to have other people on staff so that if something happens to one person, there are other people that know how to take over and keep it going.
It's funny you mention that, because that's a perfect segue into another thing I wanted to ask you about. And I think it's sad news, but I think it's good news for Steve Lloyd. But for the benefit of the people who don't know Steve, he's been kind of the person behind the success of HART all these years. But I understand in the relatively near future, you're going to be stepping down from your current position?
Yes. I've been the executive director of HART for 33 years. And at the end of this year, in December, I will be stepping down as the executive director. The board has made the decision to retire that title. And taking my place will be Candace Dickinson as the artistic director. And then there will be an operations manager who does the business side of things. And so this position is being divided between two people, which I guess is a flattering thing that I did two jobs. But there are two reasons that I've made the decision to do this. One is COVID gave me the opportunity to discover what it's like not to work 60 hours a week. And Candace Dickinson has been part of the theater for 10 to 15 years and grew up in this theater to some degree, and is an extremely capable person to step into the role that I've been playing. And it's time to let somebody else have a chance to fulfill their dreams of what they would like to see happen. I'm not going anywhere. I will continue to serve as a consultant to the board, consultant to Candace. I'll continue to direct and appear on stage on occasion. But I'm just not going to be the person who has to sign all the checks and apply for all the licenses and do all of the stuff that is necessary to keep an organization like this going.
Well, hopefully you might also lose another job, and that is at intermission and before shows, you won't have to pour wine and serve it. Hopefully they get somebody else to do that for you.
I actually enjoy that.
Okay. No, but
I grew up as a carny. My grandparents owned a carnival, and I started working when I was 8 years old in concessions on the working with them, selling cotton candy and candied apples and popcorn and snowballs, and having to deal with serving people really fast. And people may not realize it, but when I get behind a concession stand, I'm having fun. It takes me right back to being 8 years old, and I'm really having a good time.
I just get such a kick out of watching you, though. In terms of, I'll come to a show and you greet people, and then you're behind the concession stand, then you're going upstairs. You're like all over. Actually, in your retirement, they should get you maybe a pair of roller skates with. You should bronze them.
That might be.
Because you're going out else, you're going everywhere. And I guess in your retirement, or as I call it, rewirement, do you have any other non-theatrical plans you want to be doing?
Oh, I've got 7 grandchildren. That takes up a lot. I love to travel, and I want to be able to travel sometime other than February,
Okay.
which is kind of the way that it's been for a lot of the time. With regards to the things that you see me do around the theater, part of that is calculated. On Monday mornings, the town comes by and picks up trash. So on Sunday after the matinee, you may very well see me hauling trash out to the curb. A lot of that is, as I said, is calculated to communicate to all of the people who volunteer that nobody is above doing anything. That if I'm willing to do it, I'm not willing to ask you to do anything for this theater that I'm not willing to do myself. And no, I'm not too good to cart out the trash.
Well,
If it needs to be done, we all do it. Everybody involved on the staff, and with volunteers, we tell them, it's like, if the trash can's empty, if the trash can's full in the bathroom, empty the trash can. Don't wait for somebody else to do it, because there's nobody specifically being paid to do that. We all just are taking care of everything all the time.
Final question, Steve. If folks want to, again, follow HART or get tickets for the upcoming show and other good stuff like that, what's the best way to get information?
You can go online to harttheater.org, harttheatre.org. That'll take you to the website, and you can buy tickets there. You can call the box office at 828-456-6322. For the studio season, the seats are not reserved, and so we don't keep box office hours the way we do in the main stage season. So all that you have to do to make a reservation is call that box office number, 828-456-6322, and just leave a message. Hi, this is Steve Lloyd. I'd like to attend the performance on the 23rd. I'd like 2 tickets. Call me back at my phone number if there's a problem, or if you have to cancel due to snow or whatever. Otherwise, I'll expect the reservation to be there when I get there. And that's all you have to do. And you'll get there, and we'll have your name and the number of tickets the number of seats that you wanted, and you pay for them at the time.
By the way, a compliment also even to the folks at the box office. Boy, is that a good system. I bought tickets for 13 years or whatever. It really works well. It works well online, works when I make the reservation on the phone. So whoever's doing it, they're doing a really good job.
Thank you. We're in the process, just for our patrons' information, we're in the process of changing over to a new ticketing system. Our old ticketing system is in place for the studio season, but after that, we'll be on a new system. And so that's one of the reasons why, if you go to the website, you will not be able to find the main stage shows yet. It will go live in the next few weeks. and we'll have all of that. But for the moment, we're in a few week period of transition.
Okay. Steve, I'd like to thank you, as always, for being my guest on the Blaine's World Show. Also to Amy Pierce-Nash, my producer. And I look forward to seeing you at directing Slow Food. Can't wait to see that show and at least your remaining projects for the rest of the year and hopefully thereafter. Steve, a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Take care, Blaine.
Okay.